Hey folks, welcome to the video. Just a real quick little video message, whatever you want to call this, from myself. This video is actually the last of the compilation videos. Compilation season is over. Over the course of January, whilst I've been taking some time off for myself, I've been uploading compilation videos of video series I've done and other videos that work well together, just so I've still got some sort of content up whilst I'm taking some personal time off. But that time off is over now, and I have a brand new video coming out this Sunday, in just 2 days. But there is still this compilation video left to upload, so without further ado, please enjoy the lore of Zelda's famous locations, the complete Wilds Era Edition. And of course, be sure to go and grab yourself a delicious snack and drink for the video, folks. Subscribe if you're new around here for lots more fabulous Zelda content from myself. Drop a cheeky like down below, very much appreciated, and enjoy the video. I need to turn this thing off. Let's begin this adventure through Hyrule's lore by starting at the mighty beating heart of the kingdom, Hyrule Castle. This is the largest, most expansive and explorable castle in the entire series. In the open world setting of the Wilds Era games, we can almost fully explore the castle, minus areas cut off by rubble and debris. As this video will be looking at the two different eras of this kingdom, the one shown in Breath of the Wild and then its sequel Tears of the Kingdom, we'll look at the locations in chronological order. The castle we first discovered in Breath of the Wild was magnificent. Despite being in ruin, it was the landmark of the kingdom, surrounded by 4 large Sheikah columns. The presence of Calamity Ganon regained strength, and the entire area crawling with guardians of all kinds. Despite being 100 years after following the Battle of the Calamity, it remains a fortress of the enemy. The castle itself is made up of several floors and layers, like a big wedding cake, topped by the throne room and peak of the castle, where we can find this wee guy if you choose to climb to the top. Other ruined and decays room of note that we can explore are the royal dining room, the lockup, the library, the docks, the gatehouse, the courtyards, the guard chambers, Princess Zelda's room and study, the King's study, and of course the Astral Observatory, where the final battle against Calamity Ganon takes place. It's a stunning work of art, and it's truly criminal that we never get to explore this location in its prime. Not in Breath of the Wild, not in the Age of Calamity spin-off, nor in Tears of the Kingdom. We're limited to very few clips through memories and cutscenes that show us parts of the castle, but there are rooms we know exist but never see, such as the Great Hall. Unfortunately, that's blocked off due to the rubble when we play. It's a proper medieval-inspired castle. The fancy banners, the weapons on the wall, the overall look of the place, it's just so beautiful, and it's so amazing that we can even explore this much. In other games, we barely get to explore the insides, with exception to Twilight Princess, where the castle serves as the game's final dungeon. Now, throughout the course of the story, we don't need to visit the castle until the very end. You can of course go straight to face Ganon by climbing up to the Sanction by the throne room and facing the Great Evil, but otherwise, the only reason to really visit the castle before the final battle is to collect the Hylian shield, which can be found exclusively down in the prison levels, guarded by a massive Stalnox. When Link does come face to face with Calamity Ganon at the end of the game, if the story is done fully, there will be 4 laser beams blasting at the castle from the 4 divine beasts. This aids Link in battle by skipping out a battle against the 4 Blight Ganons that are otherwise battles within the 4 divine beasts. Ganon's cocoon bursts and drops all the way from the top of the castle to the observatory deep below the castle. Link battles the Great Evil down here and succeeds in slaying this monster. However, the battle isn't over. Following this, the final showdown goes into a second phase in Hyrule Field. Link comes face to face with Dark Beast Ganon, a giant hog, pig-like monster, the personality and evil desires of Ganon incarnated into this form. With the help of Princess Zelda, the hero seals away the darkness and saves the Kingdom of Hyrule. That's the present lore that we play through, but what about the history of the castle? Let's take it back to the very beginning. This lore now comes from Tears of the Kingdom, long before the castle was ever built. In the time which Hyrule was ruled by King Rauru of the Zonai and his Hylian wife Queen Sonia of Hyrule, the castle of this time was situated on the Great Plateau, but the castle as we know it would soon be built over Hyrule Field. During Ganondorf's assault on the kingdom in ancient times, as the King of Evil looked to be taking over the land bit by bit, King Rauru and the ancient champions, alongside Princess Zelda, went to face Ganondorf deep below Hyrule, in a location that would become known as the Imprisoning Chamber. This is where King Rauru sealed Ganondorf, deep below the surface. Far above on the surface is where Hyrule Castle as we know it would be built. Its purpose was actually to cover up these sealing grounds and protect the kingdom from this dark secret. We learn this through a stone tablet found in the secret passageways beneath between Lookout Landing and Hyrule Castle. It explains that the castle was erected to protect the secret, which in modern times has now risen to become a problem. Ganondorf rises up from the seal and pushes the castle into the sky, releasing his powerful gloom and beginning the upheaval. Now, taking things back to the Breath of the Wild told lore, 100 years before the game takes place, before Calamity Ganon returned, another great evil sealed deep below the castle. Life here was at its peak. The kingdom was highly populated. Castle Town was the bustling heart of Hyrule, and the kingdom's royalty, despite being just Princess Zelda and her father King Rome, things were okay. That is until the signs of Calamity Ganon's resurrection became clear. A prophecy, a tale that the great evil would return, and return it would. In preparation, the royal family alongside the highly skilled Sheikah sought after and dug up the ancient Sheikah technology of old to defend against this evil. Guardians, divine beasts, and technology not seen for ages. However, this would actually be the downfall of Hyrule. In a plot twist, when Ganon did return and seek havoc across Hyrule, the evil being managed to plague and take control of this technology, turning the Guardian tanks against the kingdom, taking control of the divine beasts, and ultimately destroying the castle and majority of the kingdom. In the dying embers of this battle, Princess Zelda went to the peak of Hyrule Castle to face Calamity Ganon and sacrifice everything in order to hold back the evil and bring the chaos to a standstill. 100 years pass, and this is where Link begins his adventure. Those are the major events of this castle's history, though we do see more through memories. We see a struggling Princess Zelda being forced into a role by her father. We get a great insight into the throne room as the champions gather in preparation for Calamity Ganon. We return in Tears of the Kingdom to face Phantom Ganon. This version of Hyrule Castle is a marvel, one that we unfortunately never got to explore in its prime. But even in the ruins, we can tell just how massive it truly was. In fact, it's even intricately designed in terms of how both guards and royals moved around. Thanks to the Creating a Champion book, we learned that certain pathways were marked by coloured banners to mark pathways for the knights within the castle, routes leading to their chambers and the lower levels of the castle, and places such as the many armories within the castle. Oh, and a really cool detail that we can find in the throne room is this melody seen above the thrones. This is the song Zelda's Lullaby that we first saw in A Link to the Past, and made even more popular in Ocarina of Time. Now, as an extension of the castle, we of course must highlight the famous Castle Town, the former heart of Hyrule, the capital. This once bustling town sits right in front of Hyrule Castle and is connected by the large metal doors that lead to the castle. Back in the day, Castle Town was a beautiful place. Bright blue rooftops, watchtowers, a cathedral, markets, and so much more. It unfortunately got the first taste of the Great Calamity, and today lies in utter ruin. If you want to learn more about this ghost town, be sure to check out my other series looking at Hyrule's ghost towns, link below. Hyrule Castle of the Wilds era is without a doubt the most expansive and explorable castle in the series. It's a proper home for the Hylian royalty, and has some extremely rich lore dating back to the sealing of Ganondorf himself. It's left in this state during the events of Tears of the Kingdom, and who knows where it goes from here. But if it can survive the events it's already been through, I see no reason why in this in-game universe it can't push on and become the thriving heart of the kingdom that it once was. Not too far from Hyrule Castle, we can find a historic site sleeping in the fields of central Hyrule. This is the Sacred Ground Ruins, or at least that's what this location is known as in Breath of the Wild. These grounds were formerly used to honour Royal Knights of Hyrule, those of the highest rank and prestige in the Hylian army. Not only were they honoured here, but it was in witness of the royal family. In the centre, we see the Triforce carved into the rocks. We see the symbols of the three golden goddesses and the royal wing crest. During the events of Breath of the Wild, when Link discovers this location, he'll be brought back to a lost memory that took place here 100 years ago, not long before the Great Calamity. This is where Link was formally appointed as Princess Zelda's personal knight, in witness of the other champions. While some weren't too pleased, others were happy for the hero. It's a location of high significance in Hylian culture, as well as just being pretty damn cool. But come Tears of the Kingdom, and the Sacred Ground Ruins have changed quite a bit. When Link reaches the surface of Hyrule after traversing the Great Sky Islands, he's directed to head for the Lookout Landing, a brand new settlement which we had never heard of. Little would we know, it's actually built right over the Sacred Ground Ruins. It's said that this settlement was created when the chasms opened up as part of the upheaval, which seems quite a quick build-up, but the chances are there were already tents and a lighter setup here, as before Link and Zelda even went missing, in time with the upheaval occurring, there was already gloom seeping onto the surface and strange occurrences taking place, so investigation would have already been underway. The landing is a fort sort of settlement. A large perimeter fence has been built around the sacred grounds, and a wee settlement is formed on the inside. It's also the new home of Pura's research. She has this whole setup inside, as well as her massive telescope, not to mention the other researchers working in the Lookout Landing. As cool as all of this is, it gets even cooler. It turns out that beneath the sacred grounds is an emergency shelter, accessed by a ladder right here in the centre. In here we can find cooking pots, weapons and armour, maps and people living down here. It's a small little room, but absolutely fascinating to know that even back in Breath of the Wild, in terms of the in-game lore, there was a wee bunker down here. If you speak to Monty, who guards the bottom of the ladder, he'll tell Link that this place was originally used by the royal family in times of need. It's quite old, but they've been fixing it up as they go, using it for supplies and a wee cosy space to rest in. The emergency shelter is actually one of my personal favourite locations in Tears of the Kingdom. I just love the vibe down here. It's perfectly tucked away beneath the surface, and even more fascinating, there are secret tunnels that link to Hyrule Castle itself. They can be a bit of a pain to navigate the first time around, but they aren't too bad, and they lead us to an insanely massive piece of lore regarding the castle. If you follow the tunnels from the shelter to castle, once you reach the staircase that will bring you up to the castle, there is a stone tablet that tells the tale of why Hyrule Castle was originally built. As we went over earlier, it was originally in order to seal over the dark secret of Ganondorf. The Lookout Landing is a multicultural settlement, teeming with Zonai Ruins to research, a perfect view to monitor the castle and the mysterious gloom rising from its depths, a lovely shop, miniature stable, and a historic site slap bang in the middle of it. Oh, and of course it has one of the brand new Sheikah Skyview towers. Pretty cool, right? Whilst this may have started as a potentially temporary settlement, I think that in the in-game world, Lookout Landing will be here for many years to come. Now for an all-time classic Zelda location. Found in the West Necluda region is Kakariko Village. This is a reoccurring location that we've covered in multiple episodes of this series already, from Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time to its potential remains in the Wind Waker. Kakariko Village is a settlement of Sheikah origins. Throughout the history of the Zelda series, this location has appeared time and time again, sometimes more on the Hylian influence side, others more on the Sheikah. When we first discovered this version in Breath of the Wild, it's a truly breathtaking secluded village within the pillars of Leva. Levia? I don't know. We're gonna say Leva, which actually aided in keeping this place protected during the Great Calamity. Kakariko managed to come out untouched, despite being so close to central Hyrule. Its hill-hidden and secluded location granted it natural protection. In this game, the village design takes inspiration from Japanese time periods, such as the Asuka and Jomon periods. I apologise if I butchered either of those pronunciations. It's the home of the village elder, Impa, and her granddaughter, Paya. They both live in the head house of the village, which is backdropped by this stunning waterfall and waterfall beneath with beautiful fish. We'll explore Impa's home in detail in a moment, but first let's walk around the village. The village is nothing short of a beautifully crafted home. We find wooden bridges across wee streams, compact fencing for farming, a cute watermill, and the people here are wonderful. Despite the Kingdom of Hyrule being a primarily Hylian land, the Sheikah keep their culture and traditions strong in this age. Whereas in past games we've seen Kakariko become a much more Hylian influence location, which is something I really love about them in this game. There are several cool parts of the village, such as the beautifully set up goddess statue, the hill walk up to the great ferry above the village, but also more somber places like the small graveyard just outside, which in itself has stories to tell. Now, inside Impa and Paya's home, we can find some incredibly interesting stuff. For starters, this is where we can find the ancient tapestry, a highly significant piece of history and lore, which depicts the first appearance of Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago. This is what aided the kingdom 100 years ago in recovering the long-lost Sheikah technology in an attempt to defend against Calamity Ganon's return. We can also find the Sheikah heirloom, a family treasure that is stolen by one of their own. A former Yiga, now Sheikah, Dorian, steals the heirloom and tries to give it to the Yiga in order to protect his own family. Link swoops in and saves the day, whilst also using the heirloom to unlock a secret shrine just above the village. Interestingly, Impa also has a photo of the location in which Link remembers his last memory, the fields of Blattery Plain, the place where Link fell 100 years ago. This photo is what unlocks his memory. Come Tears of the Kingdom, and the village is quite different. It's the same as Breath of the Wild, but with a lot more added on. The upheaval caused runes to fall from the sky, chasms to rip open, and create a new fascination with the Zonai. Kakariko Village becomes a hub for this. A large ruin has fallen atop the village, known as the Ring Ruins. The hills surrounding the village are covered in wooden scaffolding to traverse all the new Zonai Sky ruins. In fact, Princess Zelda herself appears to warn the people of the village not to enter them. Only that wasn't actually Zelda. Rather, a phantom of the princess, manifested and created by Ganondorf. Paya herself even talks about how odd Zelda's appearance was in her diary, saying the princess didn't utter a word about the condition of the village, nor had anything nice to say to anyone. A rather odd visit from the princess. Within the changes made to the village, we also now find the hub of Taro's Zonai research. This entire building has been not only extended, but covered in work. We even helped decipher some ruins alongside these Zonai researchers, and their work is documented right here. Generally, the village doesn't operate too differently. It has adapted well to the changes Tears of the Kingdom brought on, including the massive chasm that has opened up right where the Great Ferry once was. Oh, and a fun little fact about some of the residents of the village is that some of them are named after fruits. Paya for papaya, Kado for avocado, and Dorian for durian. There are other examples, but they're a lot less obvious and a bit more debatable. Before leaving Kakariko, there is one more site of significance here. With the expansion of explorable wells in Tears of the Kingdom, we gain access to the well below Kakariko, which is interesting, as back in the days of Ocarina of Time, deep below the well of Kakariko was a mini dungeon, a dark, damp, creepy location that is a truly horrifying experience, as well as where we found the Lens of Truth. Well, the well, in this age, might include a little nod to this past. On the walls of the rock down here, we see these red marks. It isn't outright said to be blood, but it very well seems to be hinting at the dark past of Kakariko Village. Found not far from our last location, Kakariko Village, we can find a true landmark of Hyrule, the Duelling Peaks mountain. A towering split down the middle mountain with two distinct twin peaks, giving the name. Though the story behind this seemingly natural wonder is quite interesting. So when we first discovered it in Breath of the Wild, we find two shrines at each peak. Pretty cool, and a good reason to climb to the top, if the view wasn't enough for you. However, we learn a little tale through an elderly man found in the Faron region by the name of Shay, who tells us that it's said that long ago, a dragon god split the mountain in two to forge a path. Now, it isn't said why this path must have been made, but I have a wee theory of my own. There are issues with my idea in terms of timelines, timeframes, and all of that chaos. But hear me out. So in Tears of the Kingdom, we learn that Princess Zelda becomes the Light Dragon. This happens in ancient Hyrule, before the peak was split into two, as we can see in this memory of Princess Zelda when she was in the ancient past. I believe that because she knew Link would need to take that path one day, she opened it up. Now, funny enough, in Breath of the Wild, Link is directed to take the path through the Dueling Peaks. Coincidence? I think maybe. I'm not too sure. It's a fun idea, but it's near impossible to prove. Either way, the Dueling Peaks are a landmark of Hyrule, and an instantly recognisable location in the Kingdom of Hyrule that pretty much anyone across the land has probably seen. Oh, and down in the depths, there's also a point where you can ascend right from the bottom all the way to the top. I thought my game was broken the first time I did this because it took a little while. My god, what a view. Over in eastern Necluda, on the coastline of Hyrule, we can find the peaceful Hateno Village. This is somewhere that across the two games, especially Breath of the Wild, we visit often. It's a brilliantly run village atop the hills of eastern Necluda, looking out to western Necluda on the front side, and out to the sea by Hateno Bay on the back side. In the modern day of Breath of the Wild, Hateno Village is essentially the new capital. It's the main Hylian settlement, and was actually untouched completely by the Great Calamity. The Guardians that became corrupt and sought out destruction never managed to make it to this safe haven, and there's actually a highly significant story that comes with that. In the dying embers of the Great Calamity, Link and Princess Zelda make their way towards Hateno Village. However, in the burning fields of Blatchery Plain, the pair are slowed down and confronted by Guardian after Guardian. This went on until Link couldn't even stand. In these dying moments, as the pair were about to be blasted by a Guardian to certain death, Princess Zelda unlocked her sacred powers, and deflected this beam, as well as taking out all of the surrounding Guardians. However, Link was down. Zelda ordered two Sheikah to take him to the Shrine of Resurrection as a last resort, and following that, she switched courses from Hateno to Hyrule Castle to face Calamity Ganon. This peaceful and lovely village is where the two were headed, but why, might you ask? Well, for starters, it's very out of the way, and as we've established, it's quite safe from the dangers of central Hyrule. But Hateno is also the home of important places, such as the Hateno Tech Lab. This is the place in which we first meet Pura and her assistant Simon, researching the ancient Sheikah technology. It's quite cool here, lots of notes, books and experiments going on. At first, the place isn't powered, and we need to help the researchers by bringing the powerful blue flame from the furnace not too far away over to the lab. A really fun little detail you can notice is these lines on the floor, marking what's Pura's and what's Simon's, as they contrast each other. Simon is a very neat and tidy researcher. Pura is a chaotic but efficient researcher. Throughout the course of Breath of the Wild, we work alongside her to restore and refine the Sheikah Slate's ruin abilities, so we visit this place fairly often. Another cool little detail is this Divine Beast looking model hanging from the ceiling. We're not too sure what exactly it is, but it's commonly theorized to have been a concept for a Divine Beast, perhaps in place of Varuta or a fifth Divine Beast in the base game. It's a fascinating lab, and even has this giant telescope pointed at Satori Mountain, perhaps a location that they are researching. Another point of interest in the village is this home over to the side. Accessed by a wooden bridge, it lies in this beautiful wee plot of land alone, and it's believed to have once been Link's home, back before the Great Calamity. When we find it in the modern day, it's in line to be demolished as it is laid empty for many years. However, Link has the opportunity to buy the home and make it his own, so he essentially has to buy his house back due to his absence for the last 100 years. Can't have shit in this economy. But over time, Link can decorate and furnish his new old home with the help of the Hudson Construction Company, the same company who are responsible for these different looking buildings. We'll be visiting this company later on in the video for another location, but for now, let's look at some more of Hateno. There's the shop where you go to die, your clothes, as the kind owner puts it, a lovely wee inn in the centre of town, a general store, and a lot of crops and farms. Hateno has a massive agriculture scene. It's a nice place, and when the time frame of Tears of the Kingdom rolls around, a good few years after Breath of the Wild, the place undergoes some changes. Mushrooms, shrooms, mushies, whatever you call them, Hateno has got them. Hateno has fallen into a TikTok trend and became crazed with mushrooms. This is thanks to new character, Hylian fashionista, Cece. This lady has an obsession with mushrooms and has turned that love into fashion, and it caught on. Many residents of Hateno Village can now be found wearing stylish mushroom hats and clothing. It's such an awesome vibe if you ask me. However, not every resident agrees. In fact, this whole mushroom craze ties into the Hateno mayor elections, as Cece and Reedy go head to head. Link manages to help them work together in the end, but it's quite the side quest and a cool insight to Hylian politics. The influence of the mushrooms changes the appearance of the village by decorating every nook and cranny with bright, vibrant mushrooms. This fashion craze can even be seen across the kingdom far and wide. You'll encounter people travelling who wear this new, trendy look all the time. It all started here in Hateno Village. One further really cool addition to the village in Tears of the Kingdom is the brand spanking new school. Set up by Princess Zelda sometime following the ending of Breath of the Wild, this absolute saint, the princess of the people, set up a school, and we can even drop in on classes to get some insight to what the local kids are being taught. Alright then. It's seriously a wonderful place to be. Other changes that happened between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom include Link's house now being marked as Zelda's house. Has she moved in? If so, where does Link sleep? Robbie from the Akkala Tech lab has also moved over to the Hateno lab, with Pura now being located at the Lookout Landing. Hateno remains to develop well. It's in a great location and appears to be doing just fine. It's a nice village. Speaking of nice villages, let's take a move to the southern coastline of Hyrule and take a wander into Lureline Village. Yet another untouched settlement from the Great Calamity. When we first discover Lureline Village, it is best described as a seaside paradise. It's very different here. The culture, while still Hylian, is different from the rest. It's a lot more relaxed. The people of Lureline have lived a very secluded life, with most of them only really knowing the southern shores. The settlement is primarily a fishing village, as well as a little bit of agriculture. You'll find loads of boats, spears and equipment. It's a shame we don't get to go out sailing in the game on one of these. It would be so much fun. The village itself doesn't contain many major points in the story, but there are some mysteries and lore to highlight. Firstly, the potential Zonai connections. It had been theorized by some that the people of Lureline may be descendants of the Zonai. This was before we got a look at the actual Zonai in the next game, of course. But the reason for this was the swirl we see across the village. It's quite similar to that of the Zonai swirl, not necessarily one for one, but pretty close, and there's also just no way to prove that this means they are one of the same. Perhaps with the people of Lureline living so close to the Zonai Ruins of Faron, they adopted this swirl and made their own version of it. There's another Zonai relic just beside the village too, a Mirror of Twilight lookalike at the Palmeri Ruins, which is part of a shrine puzzle. It's never really explained what this is, but it's clearly referencing the Mirror of Twilight. This small settlement has a general store, inn, and the usual stuff you'd expect, but it also has a gambling building. They really are living life out here unscathed by the Great Calamity. However, this luck would unfortunately change come Tears of the Kingdom. In the sequel, if you go down to Lureline Village for another relaxing getaway from the main story, you will unfortunately be disappointed, and honestly quite shocked, as Lureline Village has been destroyed, torn to pieces by nasty pirate invaders, with their ship docked right in the bay. This was the perfect opportunity for Nintendo to introduce a new monster type, but instead these pirates are actually just the regular bokoblins and boss bokoblins found across Hyrule. Alas, Link must venture in and slay them all, making Lureline safe to step foot in. Following this, we can actually take part in repairing the village by gathering resources and using our new hand abilities to help fix the place up. Lureline is a peaceful, relaxing village. It's also right beside Tuff Mountain, where we can find the Lover's Pond, the place where individuals go hoping to meet their future partner. These palm trees and boat-shaped homes are iconic, as are the people of Lureline, and their unique culture and lifestyle, compared to the rest of the kingdom. Not far from Lureline are those mysterious Zonai ruins I briefly mentioned. If you don't know what these are or why they are mysterious, then you must have missed out on the Zonai craze of the Breath of the Wild YouTube era. Long before Tears of the Kingdom released and completely changed our view on who the Zonai were, the theories and speculations regarding them were fascinating. At this point, all we knew about them was that these ruins, along with a few others across the kingdom, were of Zonai origin. They were said to have been a potentially barbaric tribe, but we didn't really know much. These ruins being the main ones, presumed to be their home. They were described as a mysterious ancient tribe, magic wielders, worshippers of owls, dragons and boars. Three animals that symbolize the Triforce of wisdom, courage and power. We also found the barbaric armor, which was believed to belong to the Zonai. What we thought we knew at this time was quite different from how things turned out, and personally, I loved that. I love that this was a complete twist from what we expected. In Breath of the Wild, the Zonai ruins were primarily explored to find the Spring of Courage, located within the jaws of the giant serpent statue, but otherwise there wasn't much more about them, other than old ruins to look at and ponder on. But once Tears of the Kingdom came out, everything changed. The Zonai were revealed through King Rauru to be not quite what we thought. He isn't exactly barbaric. We found out that the Zonai might have had different phases of life, as the life Rauru tells us about, as well as his sister Minoru, is one of advanced technology and prosperity. We don't get to see the Zonai in their prime, but we do get to see their work. All we actually see with our eyes is Rauru and Minoru through Zelda's memories. But the ruins found in Faron have changed a little bit in Tears of the Kingdom. They become part of the questline to venture up to the Dragonhead Isles, in order to explore the Construct Factory, and eventually the Spirit Temple, where we collect the final secret stone off of Minoru. This expansion allows us to enter the ruins through small rooms. Nothing massively groundbreaking to be honest, but pretty cool regardless. There's also these large horns now atop the statues, which play a role in calming the storm high above. The Zonai Ruins of Faron will always be remembered as one of the Zelda theory and lore community's biggest interests, and whilst I could probably talk about them alone for hours, I'll leave that to the Zonai experts out there, as we already have hour-long videos on the Zonai. Continuing from the Zonai Ruins of Faron, let's look at the other highly significant Zonai Ruins of Hyrule. Found in the north, just beyond the Lost Woods, we can find Typhlo Ruins, shrouded in a dark cloud, only explorable with some sort of light such as a torch. These mysterious Zonai ruins were also a massive talking point in the Zelda theory and lore community during Breath of the Wild's peak on YouTube. It's not known why they're shrouded in darkness. Nobody explains or even hints at a reason. Perhaps it's due to Calamity Galen's malice and evil. But really, it's a truly unsolved mystery that still stands today. Inside we find a Sheikah shrine, as well as a Hinox hiding in the darkness. Typhlo was arguably an even more complex mystery of the Zonai at this time, but man, did Tears of the Kingdom give us answers in a way that nobody probably expected. In the sequel, the darkness that covered the ruins has vanished, once again unexplained. The Zonai researchers have set up a little camp in the middle of the ruins, as well as a skyview tower. We finally get to explore these ruins in full detail, without the darkness covering the majority of them. What's even more interesting is that following the completion of each dungeon in the game, we can begin to unlock a sort of puzzle here, one that once completed opens up a secret staircase to below the ruins. What we find down here is truly remarkable. There is a stone tablet here that tells us that Typhlo Ruins was actually not the work of the Zonai, despite appearing as the same architecture style as seen in Faron. Rather, it was built by the Hylians. This broke what we knew about Zonai architecture entirely, as these ruins are the exact same style as those found in Faron, so either the Hylians replicated them, or they're both Hylian made. I personally believe the former, and that the Hylians just replicated the work of the Zonai, but we don't know for sure. It's all quite different from the Zonai architecture seen with Rauru and Minoru. Perhaps this was a much more primitive time frame of the Zonai, and that stood the test of time. The stone tablet tells us that Typhlo Ruins was built in honour of King Rauru, for the sacrifice he made in sealing Ganondorf, keeping the kingdom safe for years and years to come. What we thought we knew was completely flipped upside down by this information, and whilst that didn't sit well with some fans, like I said earlier, I personally love these unexpected 180s with the lore. Typhlo Ruins are certainly one of the most interesting and lore significant locations in the Kingdom of Hyrule, standing proud in honour of King Rauru. Starting off where I left the last video. As we reach the Gerudo Desert Gateway, we can look out to the main settlement of these lands, Gerudo Town, the home of the all-female population, Gerudo, known for their strong, tall warriors, strictly guarded entrance points, but extremely beautiful insides. Gerudo Town is a unique place. Not only is it found in the middle of the harsh Gerudo Desert, but the way of life here is different to the rest of Hyrule. As mentioned, the Gerudo are entirely female, bar one Gerudo male born every 100 years, typically Ganondorf. Living so secluded from the rest of Hyrule, you'd maybe think that they tend to stay here, but their way of life and culture is quite the opposite in fact. From a young age, the Gerudo are actually taught and educated about what leaving their home will be like, with a focus on finding a partner. There are actual classes here to help Gerudo women find their true love, and this unique part of their culture is one of my favourite little details about them. In the centre of town we find this marketplace, with stalls selling everything. There are lots of little alleyways with other oddities round each corner, from a Sanseal rental place to a bar where Link can grab a cold one. The warriors train in the northeast of the town, next to the throne room, which is where you'll find Lady Riju, the young but powerful leader of the Gerudo. But how she came to this role so young is quite sad. Unfortunately, Riju's mother was murdered by the Yiga clan, servants of Ganon who reside in the north of the desert. Being the only child, Riju fell straight into the role, and despite not even being a fully grown adult, she commands the Gerudo people. Though it hasn't been easy. The people were not sure about her being so young. Then the Thunderhelm was stolen by the Yiga. On top of that, In the time frame of Breath of the Wild, Divine Beast Vanaboris is causing a storm. Riju is, to be fair to her, out of her depth at this point, but with the help of Link, she truly grows into a leader. Together, the pair recover the helm, settle down Vanaboris, and bring peace and strength back to Gerudo Town, making her ancestor Urbosa more than proud. Come Tears of the Kingdom, and Gerudo Town is in a state. We find the settlement essentially abandoned, overrun by redeads, trashed and truly horrifying, but we soon discover that it hasn't truly been abandoned. It turns out that there is an underground shelter, but the entrance is sealed in order to protect the Gerudo people. In order to enter, Link has to drop down into the waterways below and find a secret passage in, and it's down here that he learns of their troubles with the recent sudden increase of redeads and storms. The existence of this bunker is quite significant lore in itself, but we go on to learn some even heavier lore that is found in this shelter. Working alongside a now more matured Chief Riju, we discover this ancient mural, depicting a triangle with 3 key points. This is a puzzle, and it spans across a large area of the desert just behind Gerudo Town. Solving it uncovers something truly magnificent and significant in Gerudo lore. This mural is the answer to uncovering the long-lost Lightning Temple, a giant pyramid-like structure that serves as one of the 4 main dungeons in the game. That's the main lore of Gerudo Town, but there are other smaller bits and pieces that you might find interesting. For example, if you decide to check out Riju's bedroom, you'll find these really cute Sansio plushies, the very same kind that we see in this minigame in Tears of the Kingdom. In the lower west end of Gerudo Town, we find a secret word-of-mouth shop, locked behind a hidden passcode. In here, Link can freely enter as a presenting male, something that will get him tossed out of town if he reveals in public. They sell unique clothing that cannot be found anywhere else. An odd, but clearly just video game logic detail, is that the town has an unlimited water source from nothing. If you follow all the wee streams of water that flow along the rooftops and down into the waterways, the source of this water is the top of the palace where Riju lives. However, if you climb to the top, you'll just find this little pool of water that creates a never-ending source of water. A true Zelda mystery. Gerudo Town is a unique place with lots of lore across the 2 games, all topped by this banging soundtrack. Boom, boom, boom. In northern Lanayru, tucked away within the mountains that wrap around the water, we can find the stunning and massive Zora's Domain. It's not your typical structure made out of standard stone, wood or metal. It's a unique blue sort of stone material making up these beautiful colours seen throughout, topped by this gorgeous fish detail atop the domain throne room. You'll find loads of pools and streams of water here, as you know, the Zora are fish people. The domain has arguably the best geographical protection you could ask for. It's surrounded by this large mountain that wraps around it, and the only routes to reach the domain and mountaintops are by traversing up the Zora River, which has multiple checkpoints and guards along the way. Being the home of the Zora, this is where we can find the Zora royalty. In the day of Breath of the Wild, that's King Dorothan and Prince Sidon, with Princess Mipha sadly no longer being with us. We work with the King and Prince during the Divine Beast Varuta questline, becoming great friends with Sidon, even riding on his back in order to make an entry into the dungeon. But it's Link's history with the late Mipha that is the most significant. Prior to the Great Calamity 100 years ago, the hero and Zora Princess were quite close, a little bit more than just friends. And this is proven, as Mipha had a ceremonial armour ready to give Link, which in her culture is traditionally meant for a future husband. Link and Mipha spent a lot of time together growing up as well. She would often heal his wounds with no hesitation. Unfortunately, she fell to the hands of the Great Calamity, but is remembered by the statue of her in the centre of Zora's domain. Some notable things around the domain are the expert craftsman Dento, who creates light scale or ceremonial tridents for Link. There's the usual shops and whatnot, a hall of pools of water primarily used for a space for the Zora to sleep, as they do so in water. The Great Zora Bridge leading up to the domain is a work of art itself. Stretching the long length over Rito Lake, it's quite amazing. The throne room is also a work of art, a stunning open area at the top of the domain, directly below that massive fish structure. Come Tears of the Kingdom, and the domain isn't in the nicest of conditions. It's a mess, covered in this thick sludge coming from a sky island high above. This is the opening clue to one of the main dungeons in the game. The location lore of Zora's domain really expands in this game. For obvious starters that we see right away, the statue of Mipha has been replaced with one of Prince Sidon and Link for their work in Breath of the Wild. Mipha's has been moved to the top of Ploymus Mountain, where this whole area has been built up with a pool, stairs, and of course the statue that is now found here. This was originally the home of a Lionel that we had to fight back in Breath of the Wild. We explore this area as part of the questline to sort out this mess, and during so we learn quite a lot of new lore. For starters, Sidon has a fiancée, Yona, who is actually from another domain in lands unknown to us. We learn this from her character bio, confirming that somewhere out beyond the Kingdom of Hyrule is another Zora royal family. The king is found to have a wee hideout behind one of the surrounding waterfalls, keeping himself safe from the sludge and any other possible threats. We discover a long-lost ancient site created by the Zora as well. Found at the bottom of the East Reservoir Lake is the ancient Zora Waterworks. Which, lore aside, I personally believe this would have made a much better dungeon than the actual one we got for this region, but more on that in a wee bit. We enter these ancient grounds in order to activate this central mechanism, creating a pathway up to the Sky Islands above the domain, where that thick sludge is coming from. This takes us to the Water Temple, which is basically just a large sky island with a water theme. Lore aside, I personally think it's one of the weaker dungeons, and lacks Zelda water dungeon identity, and that the waterworks below would have made a better fit. But oh well, I just think it would have been cooler if we had to go up to the Sky Islands to activate something, and then back down to the waterworks for the actual dungeon, but oh well. Following the completion of this dungeon, the thick sludge that was covering Zora's domain clears, as the dungeon boss Mudrock was creating it all. The domain is once again clean and pure, a beautiful sight for all, and the mighty home of the Zora people. A true fan favourite location with some very cool lore is the lone settlement of Akkala, built from the ground up. This is Tarrey Town. Found on this bridge rock platform, the town is unique as there is literally only one way in and one way out. There are 6 buildings that form in a circle shape around the platform, but it wasn't always this way during our playthrough. In fact, it was quite different. If you were to travel straight to this location after leaving the Great Plateau, you wouldn't find this settlement. Rather, you'd find a lonely goddess statue, which is a curious mystery that I've investigated a good while ago. The platform is just rocks. Tarrey Town needs to be built from the ground up, and this is done through an extensive side quest with Hudson, who we meet in Hateno Village about to demolish Link's house. He has a dream to build something of his own, and that's Tarrey Town. We find him out here after beginning the quest, working on the large rocks, and together, Link helps him build this place by bringing materials such as wood. Over time, Hudson creates homes here, and by the end of the questline, there is a brand new settlement here in Akkala. Part of the quest is also finding people to help and eventually live here. Hudson's condition is that their name ends in son as well. This is a fun and unique part of the quest, as not only do we need to find people to help with certain tasks, but also meet his name requirements. Once Tarrey Town is up and running, we can find homes, a shop, an inn, and a truly beautiful wee town in the most beautiful region of Hyrule. And no, there is no debate on that. Akkala is the most beautiful. Hudson also meets his soon-to-be wife through this project, Ronson, and we witness their wedding right here in Tarrey Town, concluding the questline. When the time frame of Tears of the Kingdom rolls around, Tarrey Town has been blowing up. No, I'm just joking. When the time frame of Tears of the Kingdom rolls around, A good few years later, Tarrey Town has become more than just that. Hudson's project has expanded, and on what was once just an empty field with old ruins and menacing guardians, is now the Hudson construction site, and there's even a wee ride to get down to there from the town. On top of this, Hudson's construction company can be found all over Hyrule, as he is at the helm of repairing parts of the kingdom with these small building sites, and advertisement signs being found far and wide. The construction site itself is quite cool, and even offers a great minigame where Link has to build some sort of vehicle and take on a racecourse. The construction company also offers Link an opportunity to build his own custom home just north of Tarrey Town. In the town itself, there is now a new site. Kilton now has this little plot where he makes statues of monsters. An interesting, but welcome addition. Hudson and Ronson also now have a wee girl, Madison. We take part in a quest involving the three and Madison gaining independence. A touching and pretty fun quest. For what started as nothing more than rocks and a lonely goddess statue, to then a small town, to now a fully developed area within Akkala, is quite remarkable, and Link was a huge part of making this all possible. In the northeast of Hyrule, atop the mighty Death Mountain, we can find the home of the Gorons, Goron City. A strong rock-built settlement with lava streams and friendly brothers all around. The city sits around here on the mountain, far up enough to be in the extreme heat conditions, but still a bit away from the peak. We find the usual shops and stuff across this unique city. The Gorons are hard-working people. Most of them do very manual jobs requiring a lot of strength, such as mining precious gems or working with metal. That is the main industry of the Gorons. Aside from the already unique setting, there is one massive lore significant feature of the city to highlight: the rock carvings of past Goron figures. Here we can see famous Gorons from over the years. Darmani III and the Elder Son, both seen in Majora's Mask, Goron from Twilight Princess, and of course Daruk, the former champion of Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. Daruk was a very famous warrior, with a big heart and an appetite for battle. Daruk's grandson Yunobo is alive in this day and age. He lives right here in the city, and we work with him during the main questline in fact. However, it's Bluto who's the boss of Goron City. The settlement in this age gives us a brilliant look at their life and culture. The Gorons are an all-male race of brothers, and they are thriving at the moment. However, the reason Link ventures up here is to help sort out the Divine Beast situation atop the mountain, as it's causing the volcano to become angered and unpredictable, sometimes even causing issues in the city itself. Working with the young Goron Yunobo, Link does successfully help them out, and Goron City returns to a peaceful state. In Tears of the Kingdom, the lore of the city and those within it really expands. Previously in the Breath of the Wild era, Yunobo was a bit of a silly character and not super memorable. However, in Tears of the Kingdom a few years down the line, he has changed. But not for the better. Unfortunately, Yunobo has been changed by the mask he wears along with the outfit. This was given to him by Phantom Zelda, a creation of Ganondorf, causing Yunobo to act strange and not in the best interests of the Gorons. He now also has a whole company set up across the whole mountain, never mind the city. Gorons are eating marbled rock roast, which is actually tainted with gloom, making Gorons ill. The mountain temperatures have also dropped massively since the last game. There are a lot less lava pools and rivers now, opening up areas outside the city for us to explore as well. The changes that Tears of the Kingdom brings are more present outside of the city itself, but the settlement does undergo some small changes. The statues of Goron heroes are now decorated, with their eyes having lights. There are new Gorons to meet around town, and generally, life here is good. Physically, the city doesn't change much between the two games apart from some minor changes, but it's still somewhere that's extremely welcoming and always lovely to visit. You know, once Link sorts out Yunobo and brings him back to reality. Out by the Heber region in the northwest of Hyrule, we can find one of the most elegant and, yet again, unique settlements in Hyrule. This is Rito Village. a tall, slender home built across these pillar rocks within Lake Totori. The Rito are a very special and unique group. They are bird people, but they weren't always. The Rito are actually an evolved form of the Zora, which is a little confusing considering we also see the Zora in this game. But regardless, we learn that the Rito evolved from the Zora during the events of the Wind Waker, as Hyrule became flooded. The Zora adapted and evolved into bird people. Their home is remarkable. It's built wrapped around this massive pillar. Stairs spiral around and walkways expand outwards to these pods, which are really cool in design as they resemble bird cages. Which is fun because, you know, the Rito are bird people. The top of the pillar the village is built around also acts as a bird perch. After the completion of the Divine Beast Vamedo questline, the Titan rests up here, exactly like a bird on a perch. The music of Rito Village is also quite interesting. It's a slowed down rendition of Dragon Roost Island from the Wind Waker, the home of the first ever Rito people that we saw. The village has many fun characters and families that Link can talk with. Key figures such as Chief Kennelly were a big part of kicking off the questline to calm Vamedo down. Kennelly himself is a more unique Rito, suiting more of an owl-like look and being much larger than most other Rito, a wise and fitting chief. There's also the likes of Hearth, who, despite denying it, is definitely in his emo phase. Sorry, lifestyle. Hearth is the village craftsman, particularly with bows, which is something really big in Rito culture, producing some of the best archers Hyrule has ever seen, such as the champion Rivali, who, despite Link and him not seeing eye to eye, was an excellent archer, and from Rito Village. There's also Hearth's close friend Teba, who we meet at the flight range, and fly up to Vamedo with in order to enter the Divine Beast. The people of Rito Village are strong warriors, loving people, and a really close-knit community who live an excellent life out here. Now, whilst not always found at Rito Village, there is another highly significant Rito who cannot go unmentioned, and that is Cass. The travelling bard who, like Kennelly, looks a little different to most Rito, taking on the appearance of a parrot-like bird. Cass can be found all over Hyrule, travelling and singing songs, but his home is Rito Village, along with his wonderful family. A few years down the line, and not only is Cass nowhere to be seen, but Rito Village is in quite the state. It's harshly frozen over and has become too cold for even the hardy Rito to live in. This is due to the regional phenomena going on here, due to the upheaval caused by Ganondorf. The ancient Stormwind Arc has returned high above the Hyrule Mountains, and this has caused crazy weather to occur in the region. Times are tough here, and many Rito can now be found at the nearby stables, as their home has become pretty much uninhabitable. It oddly looks beautiful, and the music is also really nice to listen to, but Rito life has been altered massively because of this, and it doesn't return to normal until Link has ventured up to the Wind Temple above and handled things there. Once the village has returned to its former state, everyone is cheerful and happy once again. But as mentioned, Cass, who once you completed his questline in Breath of the Wild, returns to Rito Village. He can no longer be found here, or anywhere across Hyrule for that matter. His family are still here, but they say nothing on his whereabouts. It's never explained or even hinted at. He could be away in other lands practicing his craft, or maybe something happened to him. It's an odd mystery that we probably won't get an answer to. Between the two games, Rito Village is one of my favourite places to visit. It's in a stunning location, has some incredibly unique people to meet, lots of really cool side quests that go into Rito lore, and all round is just a great place to be. In the Hyrule Ridge region, we can find one of Hyrule's most beautiful natural locations. One packed with lots of lore. Satori Mountain can be seen from afar, but up close it's even more pretty. At random times of the day or night, the mountain can be seen with this bright blue greenish glow bursting out from the peak. An eye-catcher that if you haven't seen before would instantly draw your interest. At the base of the mountain we can find the Sanadin Park ruins, which offer a great view up close. Naturally, you'll want to explore the top of the mountain to investigate the mysterious glow, which, fun fact, you can actually see over in Hateno Village. The Sheikah researchers appear to be monitoring it, as their telescope is pointed right at the mountain. Little do they know that if you head on up to the peak during its glow, you'll find something truly magical. This is the home of the Lord of the Mountain, along with many bluepeas, magical wee creatures that drop rupees if attacked. The Lord of the Mountain has a lot of lore behind it. For starters, its other known name, Satori, is a reference to the late Satoru Iwata, the former president and chief executive of Nintendo. He sadly passed away before the launch of Breath of the Wild and Nintendo Switch, but was a massive part of their development and Nintendo's success. The Lord of the Mountain, or Satori, is a way of immortalizing Iwata's legacy into the game. The Lord of the Mountain lore also extends to what is said by its camera rune description, saying that he was once an ancient sage of the land, who now in this form looks over the animals and nature of the land. If you explore Satori Mountain, you'll find lots of very interesting details. For starters, there are endless amounts of food, plants and vegetation here. From herbal gardens with a wide variety you wouldn't find together in this region, to durian trees, which are otherwise exclusively found in the Faron region. There's water, apple trees, animals, and lots of nature. The fact we can find region-exclusive stuff growing here really speaks to how unique this location is. Anything and everything grows here. Anything and everything can live here. This is the home of Hyrule's nature. In Tears of the Kingdom, the blue glow has, for reasons unknown, stopped appearing. It never shows up now, and it isn't explained why. However, the Lord of the Mountain can still be found up here. But it's now by dropping an offering to the cherry blossom tree. This can also be done anywhere across the map now, and as a result, Satori will reveal all nearby caves by highlighting them with a similar, but more faint blue glow. Satori Mountain also has an explorable cave now, with a giant foe inside, so proceed with caution. Most interesting of all the Tears of the Kingdom developments is what we find deep below the mountain, down in the depths of Hyrule. Directly below, we can find Bluepea Burrow, a home of many burrows and tunnels where it seems the Bluepeas live. This discovery was really cool to me, and works so well as the depths is of course mirrored to the surface. So where there are mountain peaks on top, are deep dips below. In this case, it's Bluepea Burrow. Mount Satori will forever be an interesting and beautiful location. A place where nature thrives, touching tributes were made, and a lot of really cool lore exists. North of Hyrule Castle lies a great forest clouded by a mysterious thick fog. A large pink tree pokes out from the middle. This is the Lost Woods. A famous location throughout the history of the Zelda series, seen in The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Oracle of Seasons, Four Swords Adventures, Spirit Tracks, A Link Between Worlds, and now Breath of the Wild in Tears of the Kingdom. The Lost Woods is teeming with lore and mysteries a belter. You can only enter via one lone path found on the eastern side of the woods, just up the road from the military training camp ruins. Once Link enters, a subtle little jingle of music plays. A hollow and slightly unsettling theme begins. You are now in the Lost Woods. Filled with thick, dense fog, dead trees, and only distant torches to try and navigate. Which, whilst that seems no problem with these guides, it gets harder the further in you go, and if you were to stray off the one route to the centre, you'll be engulfed by the thickness of the fog and brought back to the beginning of the woods. This is the mysterious and powerful protection of the Korok Forest, a safe haven found in the middle of these woods. This is also where we find that large bright tree poking out in the skyline. The Korok Forest is the home of the wee Koroks, little creatures that call this place home. They can be found all across Hyrule, hiding beneath rocks or puzzles, offering Korok seeds for finding them. This is their wonderful home, and it's a truly divine place. The Korok Forest is also the home of the Great Deku Tree, the guardian deity that looks over these lands. He's appeared in other games, most famously Ocarina of Time, where he acted as the opening dungeon in Link's Adventure, and most recently in Echoes of Wisdom. In this age, he looks over the Master Sword, which can be found resting on the pedestal in front of him. This is Link's reason for venturing in here, to retrieve the blade that was his over 100 years ago. After Link fell in battle in the fields of Blatchery Plain, Princess Zelda brought the Master Sword here to recover from its battle scars. In the modern day, Link must have at least 13 hearts to be able to pull the blade. Having less will result in an early end to his adventure. The Great Deku Tree can be explored inside as well. Walking into his lower area presents us with a shop, inn, and campfire. At the very top of the deity, we also find a little rooftop garden, which is just lovely. From this centre point of the Lost Woods, we can actually explore the further reaches that wouldn't be possible from that original main path. Through side quests, we can venture to the corners of the woods, seeing interesting locations such as Lake Saria and Mido Swamp, both named after Kokiri children in Ocarina of Time, who in terms of lore were said to have become the Koroks further down the timeline. In the darker reaches of the Lost Woods, we also find these haunting trees with wide screaming mouths, making the journeys all the more unsettling. This is all in Breath of the Wild, but once the time frame of Tears of the Kingdom rolls around, things change. A few years down the line, and that old route of entering the woods no longer works. In fact, there is no route through the woods directly that you can take. The Lost Woods has become infested with Ganondorf's gloom. It's now impossible to just walk on in like we did a few years ago. You'll simply just become lost and return to the beginning. Rather, Link must take a dive down the Minshi Woods chasm and enter from below, navigating his way through the Korok Grove down in the depths, which are an eerie woodland in the darkness. Eventually, you'll find a platform where Link can ascend up to the top and find himself in the centre of the Korok Forest. This is when we discover that the Great Deku Tree has fallen ill to the nasty gloom infecting the land. This has a knock-on effect on the surrounding Korok Forest. It's no longer a fun, vibing place. It's quiet and a shell of what we once knew. In order to restore the deity to his former health, we must dive down inside the tree and face the danger that lies at the bottom. Phantom Ganon. But this battle is much more difficult than your average Phantom Ganon encounter, as this is within an incredibly enclosed space, with gloom on the floor. I remember well how many attempts this took me and how frustrated I got, but once dealt with, this restores the Great Deku Tree and Korok Forest to its former health. It's mostly the same as previously, bar some small changes such as this hidden room found if you ascend within the Great Deku Tree, even containing a wee reference to the first Zelda game. The Lost Woods and Korok Forest across these two games are a great continuation of an iconic Zelda location. Out by the stunning Akkala region, not too far from the South Akkala stable, we can find a former fortress of defense. This is the Akkala Citadel. It stands quiet these days, only patrolled by the very same corrupted guardians and monsters that caused the downfall of the Citadel. The full scale of this location expands to the parade grounds, the bridge, and of course the Citadel itself, all now lying in ruin. We can explore the outside by going up the stairs wrapping around. There are platforms on the way up where we can find cannons and other equipment. At the top we find a building that has seen better days. This was likely somewhere for people to stay or for storing things. Again, finding more cannons up here. The Citadel's purpose back in the day was to defend Hyrule against any potential threats, primarily from the eastern coastline, including unnamed invaders from out at sea. It was once Hyrule's toughest fortress, with many soldiers staying here, but there was one threat that was too much for it to handle. 100 years ago, during the events of the Great Calamity, the Akkala Citadel acted as Hyrule's final line of defense. As things became more and more dire out in central Hyrule, as the Guardians, monsters, and Ganon's force slowly took over the kingdom, the Hylian army fell back to this fortress to begin their last stance. One final effort to try and take their kingdom back. But it was too late. This is where the Hylian army's efforts met an end. They were overwhelmed by Ganon's forces, and as the insides caved in on themselves, the outsides blasted by guardian beams, the Hylian army fell, and that was the day that Ganon won. The day Hyrule fell. In the modern day, we can find a man standing on the other side of the entry bridge that is now collapsed. His name is Nell, and he's wearing ruined soldier's armour. He explains that he's visiting the citadel to pray on the spot where his relatives fought in battle. Interestingly, some fans have suggested that he could be a ghost or spirit of a soldier that actually fell in the battles back then, revisiting the site where he fell. This is due to the condition of his armour, but there's little evidence beyond that to support this. Some fans report him not respawning after activating the tower. Others do, but it's likely this is some sort of error or glitch that has since been patched, though I do find it a really cool theory. In Tears of the Kingdom, things change a little. We can now explore the insides, but they are nothing like what they would have been, or like the insides we saw in the Age of Calamity spin-off game. Rather, it's a cave that is opened up within the rubble that the insides have become. The top now has a gloom spawn ready to scare you, and over on this platform, a thunder gleeok has decided this is home. The Akkala Citadel is a seriously important part of Hyrule's history. This is where the kingdom fell in battle during the Great Calamity. But it still stands tall today, despite the damage done to it. A reminder of what this kingdom has gone through. Now, this next location isn't actually in Breath of the Wild, so we'll be starting in the Tears of the Kingdom time frame. One effect of the upheaval caused by Ganondorf was large chasms opening up across Hyrule. If you venture down into them, you'll find a massive underworld location known as the Depths. Instantly, you're hit with a loud blast of a horn, setting the tone. Then soft but eerie music begins to play. You find yourself in a world like no other. It feels alien. The plants look different. The ground is dark, and without the help of a light root tree, everything around you is just darkness. The Depths are a mirrored underworld to Hyrule. This makes for some rather unique areas down here. For example, if you explore below the Hebra mountain range, you'll find a massive drop-off where things get really dark and all sorts of creatures can be discovered. The common enemies down here are frogs and giant frogs. The smaller ones are rather easy to deal with, but the big boys are a handful. You'll also find gloom-infested bokoblins, moblins, and other enemies you'd typically find on the surface. There are boss battle replays to be found as well, offering a unique challenge to the original boss fights. You can find regular overworld bosses as well, including a gleeok. That's right, an underground battle with a dragon in the darkness. There are many key locations down here, from the old mines all over to the Colosseums, the lost city of Gorondia, the construction factory, the Gleeok den beneath Typhlo Ruins, the dark skeletons that mirror the great skeletons on the surface, and of course, the Spirit Temple. There are also mysterious statues to be found down here, from mole-like people we don't know the identity of to bargainer statues that we can make deals with. As well as these phantoms that usually hold weapons, it's believed that these are the souls of soldiers that fell in battle. Below Princess Zelda's memorials on the surface, we find 3 of these in a little triangle. Rather interesting, right? The Depths are also the new home of the Yiga clan. You'll find several Yiga camps down here, as well as Master Koga, who managed to survive quite the fall in Breath of the Wild. It's interesting that we find them down here as they are Ganon worshippers, and Ganondorf is found down here. Perhaps they gravitate. We chase him around down here across several locations until we finally manage to beat him. Through the Yiga questline, you can also learn schematics for your building abilities, which is another really common thing to find down here, Zonai parts for making vehicles and such. The Depths is filled with Zonai, which can be refined to power Zonai creations, so it's no wonder there's so much ancient Zonai work down here. But the most significant lore of all down here is what lies beneath Hyrule Castle, Ganondorf's lair. The source of Hyrule's gloom is found in the Depths and requires quite the journey to get there. This is the deepest of the deep. You travel through old ruins, forgotten passageways that have been around since King Rauru sealed the Demon King away in ancient times. And at the bottom of it all is Ganondorf. Originally found here in the Imprisoning Chamber, but later found even deeper down in his gloom lair. This is where the final boss battle begins, at the deepest point of the depths. Throughout the depths, you'll also find these gloom roots, which all point back to the castle, where Ganondorf is. It appears as though they're draining all life to feed Ganondorf, a very neat attention to detail. Overall, the depths are an incredibly unique location. They contain a lot of significant lore and mysteries that you could dive into all day. I've made a dedicated video on the lost city of Gorondia, as well as the dark skeletons if you're interested in a deeper dive into those specific topics. I'll link them below. The depths are just so spooky, eerie, and just give otherworldly vibes. I love them. In the north of Hyrule, along the Tanagar Canyon, we can find one of the most lore-rich and mysterious locations in the Kingdom of Hyrule. Here, we find the Forgotten Temple, an ancient site deep within the canyon, a massive temple now in ruins. The outsides are breathtaking alone. This place is giant. The architecture is stunning, but the insides are even more incredible. It's an extremely well-designed temple, and dates back to potentially the earliest records known of Hyrule. In the current day, the effects from the calamity are still present, as it's littered with guardians in here, but if Link gets past them, he'll find something truly unbelievable. At the back of the temple, there is a giant goddess Hylia statue, the biggest in the game. Very reminiscent of the one seen in Skyloft in Skyward Sword. In fact, there's a very popular theory by Zeltic that goes into the deep connections between this temple and Skyward Sword. It's an incredible theory and I highly recommend checking it out later. He explains it and goes into it really well. The reason for coming here in Breath of the Wild is for the reward after completing all 120 Sheikah Shrines. We come here to receive a reward, the Hero of the Wild set. A unique tunic for this Link to wear. In Tears of the Kingdom, the Forgotten Temple actually expands quite significantly. If you return to the location and head to the goddess statue, you'll find it toppled over now, revealing an entrance to an area we didn't know existed. Back here, you'll find this room. There are 7 rocks surrounding this centerpiece, which we learn in ancient times was the room where the ancient champions, along with King Rauru and his sister Minoru, met up during Ganondorf's rise, forming plans and tactics on their next move. In this corner, we find a grave, with sundelions growing out. This is the grave of the late Queen Sonia, who was unfortunately murdered by Ganondorf at the original Hyrule Castle. King Rauru left a sundaline at her grave, which has caused this growth. There is another room further back that displays a large map of ancient Hyrule. There are some small differences you can notice here compared to modern day Hyrule, such as the Dueling Peaks not being split, as we know that they were originally just one peak, as seen in Zelda's memories, and told to us as a legend, but they were later split by a dragon. The large chunk cut out of the Hebra Mountains is also not present here, which is believed to have been created by a Divine Beast laser. The map also displays the Dragon Tier locations to help Link on his questline, as he visits here with Impa. The Forgotten Temple is easily one of the coolest locations in Hyrule. It's from a time long ago, and despite having gone through it, it still stands strong today. This next location is one of the few that won't be starting with its Breath of the Wild era first. Like the Depths, this is one that we first discover in Tears of the Kingdom. The Great Sky Islands cluster of islands is where Link sets off on his adventure to find Princess Zelda and destroy Ganondorf. In an island above the main set, Link wakes up in the Room of Awakening, surrounded by mysterious and unknown ruins, new technology. For all we know, this is a cave or a dungeon deep below Hyrule. What last happened to Link was falling down by Ganondorf, but as Link makes his way out, he quickly comes to learn that he is in the sky, very high. He must dive down to the Great Sky Islands, and it's here that we can begin to learn the lore and history of this seemingly magical place in the sky. The Great Sky Islands can be found high above the Kingdom of Hyrule, right here on the map. They became visible as a result of the upheaval caused by Ganondorf's awakening at the very beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. It serves as the game's tutorial, but is also rich with lore. The most obvious and apparent thing here is the Temple of Time. Now, that's a name we've heard a lot across the series. The Temple of Time appears in several Zelda games, often as a resting place for the Master Sword. Though this version of it looks nothing like the one we know, nor the one down on the surface. But believe it or not, this is the original Temple of Time, and it once stood where the one we know on the Great Plateau does now. We'll get into how exactly it moved in a wee bit, but let's talk about the temple's lore in this time frame. Outside the doors of the temple is where Link first meets the ancient king of Hyrule, King Rauru, in spirit form. Turns out that Rauru was that mysterious hand at the beginning of the game down in the Imprisoning Chamber, the one that saved Link from falling to his doom. He explains to Link briefly what's going on, and this kicks off the tutorial as Link must visit the Zonai Shrines in order to open the door to the temple. Once inside, we're met with this stunning interior, water flow and machine works. It's quite elegant and like nothing we've ever seen in the Zelda series. We need to use our new ability Recall in order to make our way up here, and this leads us to the platform round the back. Over here, one of the most important cutscenes in the game takes place. This entire time, Link had been carrying the broken Master Sword following what happened not so long ago with Ganondorf. On this platform, he meets a golden orb. Not entirely sure what it is, Link approaches, and this mysterious orb asks for the blade, and in unexplainable fashion, the sword is taken through time by Princess Zelda in the ancient past, where she is stuck, and she takes the blade to heal it. A dragon then bursts through the clouds, and the sky's clear. Zelda speaks to Link telepathically, telling him to find her, gravitating him towards the Lookout Landing. So just how did ancient sites of the kingdom make their way up here? Well, it's explained by a construct that following King Rauru sealing away Ganondorf, they knew that one day a hero would emerge, and it was said it would be at this site. So in order to protect that hero, they raised them to the heavens far above. And this is where Link starts his adventure after the opening below Hyrule Castle. But it might not be just the Temple of Time, once previously found on the Great Plateau along with the original Hyrule Castle. But where is the castle up here? Well, it clearly hasn't made its way up like the temple has, but it might still be here. The original Hyrule Castle was found on the Great Plateau, and we'll get more into that location after this. The ruins that Link wakes up in, sitting high above the main Great Sky Islands, very well could be the remains of the original Hyrule Castle. I made a video a little while back going into this theory of mine, as I find it hard to believe that the temple would make it up here, but not the castle. I personally believe that these remains where we wake up in the Room of Awakening were once part of the original Hyrule Castle. But I do need to disclaim, that is not fact, just theory. There are other ruins across the island, such as what appears like a settlement of sorts, with different layouts, features and community vibes all over. We find the odd building all over the islands, to be fair. Some were likely storage, or maybe even wee workshops. All the ruins generally point towards there being a community living here at some point in time. The Great Sky Islands as a whole represent many things: peace, serenity, and divine protection. Dragon culture and lore is extremely present here. Almost every staircase, building or ruin will have some form of dragon representation, and this just shows how heavily worshipped these creatures were in Zonai culture. So much so that the Zonai themselves were known to turn into immortal dragons. It's through their knowledge that Princess Zelda was able to, after all. We return to this location a little further into the story. It's optional, but you can take on a side quest taking you through an ancient trial of sorts, with the reward being the Zonai fabric for Link's paraglider. The Great Sky Islands are an iconic location of Tears of the Kingdom, packed with immense lore and history, mysteries, and of course, the most important thing, stunning views. Before getting into the final location of the Wilds Era episode, I want to highlight some locations that absolutely deserve to be highlighted, but I just don't think I could fit them all in with their own individual segments. From places of mystery to just places that look cool, here are my honourable highlights. The Great Plateau. Back where it all started with our first footsteps into the world of Breath of the Wild. This was our very first look at this iconic, expansive, and magnificent version of Hyrule. A post-apocalyptic world laying quiet in ruin, taken over by nature, and our knowledge on what's going on is non-existent. The Great Plateau is, if you hadn't guessed by the name, a plateau, which is a raised area of land like this. In the centre, we can find a curation of the Sheikah within this cave. This is the Shrine of Resurrection, which has been mentioned across these two videos, and this is exactly where you'll find it. This is where Link was taken 100 years ago after falling in battle, though Zelda and the Sheikah were not actually 100% sure it would work, as the shrine was still experimental, but that gamble would pay off, as this is where our adventure begins with Link waking up on this bed. As he gets his bearings and heads for the exit, this is where we get one of the most iconic shots in the Zelda series. On the Great Plateau, there is only one inhabitant here, the Old Man, who helps guide Link around, including activating the Sheikah Tower, which sets off a chain reaction causing the rest to pop up across Hyrule. He pushes Link in the direction of the 4 Sheikah shrines found on the plateau, but why? Well, it turns out that this old man is actually the former King of Hyrule, just in spirit form. We learn this atop the Temple of Time ruins after completing all 4 shrines. The king reveals himself and explains to Link exactly what has happened to Hyrule, as the hero has no memory after being in there for 100 years. After being told that the kingdom fell to the hands of the Calamity, destroying a large majority of life, especially in central Hyrule, the king guides Link off on his quest. But let's explore the plateau and what it has going on. Well, of course there is the main ruin here, the Temple of Time, an iconic Zelda location that has appeared many times across the series. Back in the day, prior to the Great Calamity, many people would have visited here to pray to the goddess Hylia. There are also 3 smaller buildings in front of it that each bear a symbol of the 3 golden goddesses that created the land. Perhaps on the way to pray to Hylia, people stopped in these individual smaller buildings to pray to each of the individual goddesses for their part in creating Hyrule. Despite the Great Plateau taking a lot of hits from the Great Calamity, this fine structure still manages to stand today. Other sites, such as the former settlement here, are not so strongly standing. We can find the remains of what once was, most noticeably down at the Eastern Abbey just across from the destroyed bridge. But there's also the likes of the fountain and where homes probably were. Back before the Calamity, there was life here on the plateau, but now, it's a ghost town taken over by nature. There is natural nature as well, such as the Forest of Spirits across the northern side of the plateau, the River of the Dead on the western side, and Mount Hylia on the southern side. Atop this mountain is a very interesting detail, a grave that actually belongs to the King of Hyrule. Now, whilst that's not outright displayed in game, it is known through the game files, which titled this as the King's Grave. This makes sense as he's just been waiting here all these years for Link. Not too far down from here, in the woodlands of the southern side, below the Temple of Time, we can find the Old Man's Hut, a place where, in his disguised form, the King of Hyrule would reside. We can still find the odd active guardian up here as well. In the Eastern Abbey, there is one that is in the way of reaching the Sheikah Shrine here, which is a scary, but necessary introduction to guardians. During the Breath of the Wild DLC pack, The Champion's Ballad, we actually get a cool expansion of the Great Plateau lore. If Link returns to where he started in the Shrine of Resurrection, he can enter a trial of sorts, with a unique weapon known as the One-Hit Obliterator. Its name pretty much explains it. It can one-hit kill enemies, but on one condition. The wielder also takes on those conditions. Link himself also becomes a one-hit target. This questline adds more shrines to the plateau as well, but the truly large expansion comes after this. We enter a 5th dungeon that is found below the Great Plateau. A sort of 5th divine beast that is actually a mix of all the elements. Completing this dungeon takes us to a Sheikah monk, Maz Koshia, who in really unsettling fashion begins to stand up from his platform where every other Sheikah monk would give Link a blessing. Maz Koshia stands up and challenges Link to a battle. We are then transported to a giant floating platform in the sky to battle the highly skilled monk. Upon completion, Link is rewarded with the Master Cycle Zero, a Sheikah Tech motorbike to travel across Hyrule on, which is just ridiculously cool. The Great Plateau is where everything started, not just for Breath of the Wild as a game, but Hyrule. In lore. That is what the King of Hyrule tells us, and for a while that information was a little confusing, as you'd think Hyrule Castle and Castle Town were the beginnings of Hyrule. But the king says that according to legend, the Great Plateau is the birthplace of Hyrule, and in Tears of the Kingdom, we learn why that is actually the truth. Come the time frame of the sequel, and the Great Plateau hasn't actually changed all that much visually, bar for some Sky Island debris and chasms having opened up where the shrines once stood. But what does develop about this place is the lore. What we learn in Tears of the Kingdom is highly significant. We learn that this is where the original Hyrule Castle was located, long before the one as we know it ever existed. This is mostly learned through Princess Zelda's Dragon Tear memories, showing us of our time spent in the ancient kingdom of Hyrule. During this time frame, the kingdom is run by King Rauru of the Zonai, and his wife Queen Sonia of the Hylians. We don't get any clear shots of this castle, only glimpses in the corner of certain shots, but we know it was located around here based on external shots and internal shots that give us reference points, such as this one in the throne room where we can see the Temple of Time outside. Speaking of, back in ancient times, the Temple of Time appeared as it does in the sky, as this was the original. The one we're more familiar with was built later. The castle took on a shape like this, a more pyramid-like design compared to the more medieval fantasy design of the one we know today. Back in this time frame, the plateau was built up differently, and we see various glimpses of this throughout Zelda's memories, but sadly, we don't ever get to explore ancient Hyrule, which is really gutting. In the actual time frame of Tears of the Kingdom, there have been some developments worth noting. The main one being that the Shrine of Resurrection is no longer there. It's still a cave, but it's more expansive now, and also a hideout of the Yiga clan. Hey fellas, you're a little late to try and catch Link whilst he was sleeping. The Yiga have also taken over the hut that the old man could once be found in. The king's grave atop Mount Hylia can now be found with a royal claymore beside it, the weapon the king was known to wield. Subtly, but definitely confirming that this is indeed his grave. A few caves have opened up around the plateau as well, now having the ability to drain the water from the original entranceway, revealing a mysterious statue that actually kicks off a wee interesting side quest. But probably my favourite bit of lore development with the plateau is what we find in the depths directly below the Shrine of Resurrection. This is the Spring of Revival, water that when swimming or submerged within, slowly heals you, like the hot springs found on Death Mountain. It's quite possible that this magical water was part of what healed Link over the course of 100 years, as we see water draining from around him when we start our adventure in Breath of the Wild. Perhaps it was sourced from down here. That water might just be the very same, using its healing properties to bring the hero back to full health. Let's begin where the adventure does, the Great Plateau in Hyrule Castle. In this ancient time frame that Zelda's sent back to, the ways of life are both different, but the same. There's a distinct ancient vibe around the place, particularly in the architecture which we saw a lot of in Tears of the Kingdom, just in a ruined state, as well as the way everyone dresses. It's quite similar, but different. However, the world also feels quite modern, with a blend of advanced Zonai technology. Across the Great Plateau during this time, we can find several training camps, typically circle arenas made for Hylian soldiers to battle against one another. Zelda herself gets in on this combat and faces off against Hylian captains and even mighty Gorons. It's all very well set up. It's basic fences and watchtowers, but they do the job perfectly. Leading up to the castle itself, we enter through a large stone gate, much like the entrance to Castle Town in the modern day. Only in this era, there isn't a massive, bustling town here. In fact, we don't really see many homes here on the Great Plateau. It appears to have been in use primarily for the castle and Hylian army, though it's fairly likely there were some homes up here. On the way up to the castle, you'd pass several large stone gateways, markers and defense points that led to the well-positioned Hyrule Castle. We can also notice some entrances built into the side of the walls and the pathways up, possibly entrances to the lower levels of the castle built down into the ground, similar to those seen in the modern castle. This is a version of the castle unlike the one of modern times. It takes on a layered pyramid sort of design, high vantage points near the top, and lots of space on the lower levels. It's not connected, but the design reminds me of Ganon's Pyramid of Power seen in A Link to the Past, after Link transports through to the Dark World. There's 3 main levels that we can see here: an upper tier, a middle tier, and a lower tier, as well as surrounding buildings that are part of the overall castle. It's quite likely that the castle goes deeper than this, with levels and rooms built down into the ground as well. We can also see this extension of sorts off to the side, which at first I'd believed to be the throne room, as this here is the Temple of Time. We know from interior shots of the throne room that we saw in Tears of the Kingdom that the Temple of Time could be seen directly outside the window. However, one key detail that changed this is the stained glass window at the end of the throne room. That same one can be seen from the outside of the castle when we get this very brief back shot of the castle, making this part here where the throne room would be, meaning that these doors here directly lead to the throne room. The other above may have been the King and Queen's living chambers. As to what not only this building here is, but also this smaller one on the other side, we simply don't know. We also see various exterior shots showing us that the castle grounds contain beautiful gardens and pathways wrapping around the frame of the castle. Zelda is seen walking and talking around these areas with Sonia and Lunalia. Whilst we've got a much better look at the castle, we've also just been teased a bunch of areas we never get to explore further. And to be honest, I kinda wish we got to explore the castle itself a little bit more in this game. We don't actually play in the castle at all outside of one battle. In one room. That's it. On the inside, we get an okay amount of coverage, but I'd honestly have hoped for a little more. Our first look is inside a room where Lunalia, the castle chamberlain, helps Princess Zelda get fitted into more time frame appropriate clothing for a royal. There's unfortunately not much to take from this room. It looks nice, but that's about it. We then move over to Minoru's study, which we had already seen through Tears of the Kingdom, and it's the same room, just more footage on it. Tall walls stacked with books and lots of Zonai technology around the study. The next interior scene is arguably the most interesting. As we head to the throne room, we get a better look than we did in Tears of the Kingdom. It's a 2-level room fit with elegant water features parting the middle and sides, stunning banners decorating the hall, royal carpets laid down for the feet of those so honourable to enter, and of course that gorgeous stained glass window that sits above the thrones. We can see that there's tables off to the side as well. It's possible that this is where royalty would eat their meals, but it's just as possible that there was a dedicated dining hall like in the Hyrule Castle of the modern era. And there's all these other buildings that we don't know what's in them, so it's quite likely it could have been in there. We get this look during a scene that shows us the Goron chief Agriston receiving a symbolic envoy mask, as King Rauru reinforces Hyrule's alliance with the Gorons, a significant event that took place here in the castle. Unfortunately, we didn't find out about any other significant areas within the castle. One I had hoped to learn more about was the Room of Awakening, where Link begins his adventure in Tears of the Kingdom. It was never made clear if this was even part of the castle, but it was clearly part of the same area where we find the Temple of Time in Hyrule Castle at the very least. Our last few interior looks come in different circumstances. During Ganondorf's deceptive plan to attack the castle, King Rauru finds himself rushing inside to find Queen Sonia, his wife, only to be bombarded by the evil construct, Girahim. It's not stated which room this is in, but it's somewhere within the castle that we haven't seen before, and a battle between the king and the construct takes place here. This is followed by the infamous and tear-jerking Sonia scene. One that broke our hearts seeing it in Tears of the Kingdom, and then all over again in Age of Imprisonment. Only in this game, there's a small expansion to what happened. We see Ganondorf on the level below Sonia and Zelda, controlling his puppet, ready to pounce. We previously didn't know that he was literally there the whole time. A very interesting shot we get during that scene shows us this much wider look at the entire castle and grounds that I've been referring to. There's 2 larger main sections to the castle which I previously had no idea of. Due to the lack of exploration around this area, it's impossible to say what's exactly where, but this shot here shows us just how expansive the castle and surrounding buildings really are. It's clear that this section on the left is the main part, as it's clearly bigger, and we already confirmed that the throne room is inside there. But this smaller section does take on a similar design. We previously didn't know a lot of the pre-war events, to be honest, including the fact that leading up to this, Ganondorf and Hyrule were on peaceful terms for around 6 whole months. All of these events revolve around Hyrule Castle, and we knew absolutely nothing of that through Tears of the Kingdom. Ganondorf would go on to take control of the castle for the remainder of the Imprisoning War, taking reign in the throne room. This is right up until the Hylian forces face the castle head-on to lure Ganondorf out and get him to the Imprisoning Chamber. Speaking of which, let me hand you over to my good friend now.
The beginning of everything. The Imprisoning Chamber is likely one of the single most theorised in locations in the entire series, not because there were theories about the chamber itself, but because of the sheer amount of theories around Ganondorf before Tears of the Kingdom launched. The Imprisoning Chambers also include the walk up to it, so basically anything that we see at the start of Tears of the Kingdom, including the murals, and that's our first big point. In the Zelda series, I'd say 99.9% of the time we don't get to see people who've created the murals of the heroes of the series. So let's think about something like, the start of Wind Waker, or that one mural from Twilight Princess that people like to speculate on. Even Breath of the Wild's Calamity Ganon mural that sits inside of Impa's house. There are many more murals in the series, but you get the idea. Age of Imprisonment had us not only see the character that created the murals that Zelda goes crazy for in the opening of its predecessor, but she's a major player, despite not being playable, in the story of the imprisonment as a whole. Lunalia created the murals as seen in the final few cutscenes of the game. More than anything, it's interesting to actually see how this mural was put together. It wasn't a retelling of the events of the imprisonment years down the line and a story muddled up from generation to generation like myths often are. It was simply just a retelling of events directly after the imprisonment. Over the course of Age of Imprisonment, we clearly see characters that weren't involved in Tears of the Kingdom story, and they weren't even slightly touched on in Tears of the Kingdom. The two biggest culprits for this are Kalamo and the Mysterious Construct. They actively changed the war effort for the people of Hyrule multiple times, but they're not involved in the mural. The reason being that the involvement of the construct itself is dangerous for people to know about. If everyday people in Breath of the Wild Hyrule knew about the power of the Zonai's magic and technology, there's probably a fair few people that would have been hungry for that power. The more that people would have been exposed to the construct, the more that they would have tried to create their own copy. And even if they did succeed, then there's at least a chance that they could create their own evil version of the construct, and that risk is far too costly. So instead, they leave the Mysterious Construct and his best bud Kalamo out of the mural. The probable real reason for why they're not in the mural at the end of Age of Imprisonment is because they weren't in the mural in Tears of the Kingdom, but I do really like this explanation for why they're not included. Plus the ending for those two characters is far different and spans the environment of Hyrule. But I digress, more on that later. The main imprisoning chamber and where Ganondorf's locked up for untold thousands of years is quite interesting. Around the finale of the game we can see Rauru starting to piece together the chambers as he starts to drop hints about a plan B that would save Hyrule. He probably knew all along that he'd have to sacrifice himself, so he prepared for that outcome, creating or maybe finding a massive chamber that could then be built on top of in due time. Of course, the Warriors games are nothing without large hordes of enemies, and this is the final mission of the game for many characters. Having the Demon King's army follow him into this abyss was a really good choice. It makes the end of the battle feel that much more earned. Initially, Ganondorf just has his crew running the lines, trying to destroy the sages, but as they keep thwarting every wave of enemies that come flying their way, the Demon King becomes more and more impatient, getting Phantom Ganons to fight the sages instead. In general, these phantoms are integral to Tears of the Kingdom and this game due to them being big players in the latter stages of both games, but they also establish how strong Ganondorf's power is. He can conjure phantoms of himself that are probably just about a quarter as strong as him, and he can basically have as many of them as he wants on the battlefield at once, really showing his conjuring prowess. Also, a quick note, but seeing the parallels of the heroes looking beat both on the surface and in the depths was such a clever touch. You can see their struggles. Even though many things are paralleled in these final fights, this scenario ends very differently at first glance for both Rauru and Kalamo with the construct. But it also really doesn't end that differently. Rauru is engraved in murals, while Kalamo and the construct are nailed into the very earth surrounding Hyrule. Finally, we come to how the imprisoning chambers are the imprisoning chambers, and not just Ganondorf's chambers or something. Hyrule Castle being built on top of the site. We've known that Hyrule Castle was keeping the big bad from escaping these chambers for the last couple of years now, but seeing the whole imprisonment play out without the interference of Demon King, Secret Stone, feels very surreal. Knowing that the castle would sit above it in due time is mighty nice. Though Tears of the Kingdom does fail as a sequel in some ways, a really cool thing I like to do when I revisit Breath of the Wild now is just think about the fact that somewhere underneath that giant castle is the sealed corpse of Ganondorf and Rauru too, trying to protect everybody on the surface. Rauru is truly one of the most tortured characters in the Zelda series.
Following the brutal murder of Queen Sonia, King Rauru and Princess Zelda teleport to just outside the Great Plateau. As Ganondorf launches his full-scale attack across the Kingdom of Hyrule, those who can flee from the castle. Together, a plan is made to head north for the Tanagar Canyon and the Forgotten Temple that lies deep within. Only in this era, it wasn't referred to as the Forgotten Temple, though once you see it, it looks pretty forgotten. As the Hylian forces set off and begin battling their way through central Hyrule on their refuge for safety, slashing through hordes of monsters with Ganondorf now in full control of the castle, the King of Evil has further tricks up his sleeve to try and stop them. After summoning 4 servants of his evil, Grim Gera appears, an arch-fiend formed by Ganondorf's dark magic. Swiftly, the Knight Construct Clink and Calamo appear to fight off the malicious foe, allowing the others to escape and reach the Forgotten Temple. This location is fascinating. We first discovered the temple in Breath of the Wild, and then further expanded on it in Tears of the Kingdom. It's an ancient building from a time long ago, so far back that even in Age of Imprisonment, an ancient time frame in comparison to the modern day, it still appears quite old. It was heavily theorized and speculated on as to its origins, even linking it back to Skyward Sword, but as of right now, they still aren't entirely confirmed. Once the Hylian forces reach the temple, we can see them in the early stages of setting up inside, forming wooden fences and gates to protect themselves from outside and organize the inside. An interesting detail here is the lack of Zonai technology. It's not a surprise, but there's a lot more basic and primitive work going on, such as fire for light. Typically, they'd have used Zonai torches, but given the circumstances, they've been stripped down to the basics for the most part. Within the temple, we can imagine this setup including the likes of sleeping areas in barracks style for efficiency, dining areas to share out food and water, possibly some small training areas for soldiers to stay sharp, and of course an armory of sorts to organize and hand out weapons to bring to battle. We also see Queen Sonia's gravestone, first seen through Zelda's memories in Tears of the Kingdom. We see Rauru laying Sundalines down, his wife's favourite flower. In these early days staying in the temple, we see plans begin to form on how to tackle Ganondorf's army, strategic moves on just how to handle the sheer force of evil, as well as Rauru and Zelda growing closer in the absence of Sonia. Through the course of the story, Rauru manages to gather the Zora and Goron leaders to form a stronger alliance to help save the kingdom, later joined by the Rito leader and eventually creating an official alliance between Hyrule and the Gerudo, who at this point wanted nothing more than to take Ganondorf down as well, after being betrayed by their own leader. With the Gorons, Zora, Rito and Gerudo by Rauru's side, he gathers them all inside the temple to set out a final game plan to defeat Ganondorf. But first, he gives the new leaders of this Hyrulean army Zonai secret stones, enhancing their powers and ability to fight through this war. Before plans could be set out to finally take back their kingdom, Ganondorf's forces had reached the temple, blocking them in with no escape. This forces a battle on the grounds of the temple, taking us to the outside to push back Ganondorf's forces and secure the temple once again. Through tough battles and menacing foes, trying everything to stomp the Hyrulean forces down, we get a great look at how well set up the whole area was. Many vantage points, high fences and barricades could be seen all over, which really highlights the strength of Ganondorf's army as they penetrated these points of defense. Ultimately, Rauru and his newly formed team pin back the monsters. This is followed by a powerful speech that takes place right outside the temple, rallying his people, uniting in arms, and acting as a massive moment and momentum in their fight to take back Hyrule. My curiosity wants to know how the temple was used and viewed prior to these events. Do people across Hyrule know of it and its history? It still appears quite old and ancient even in this ancient time frame. Before being used for refuge, it likely just laid empty as it does in the modern day. It's a fascinating landmark of the kingdom, one that has history dating back to times we cannot confirm. I'm curious if the people of this era knew more about it than the people of the modern era, but it's just something the game doesn't explore. In this era of its existence, it was used to seek refuge during the Imprisoning War, and that's an expansion of lore that I find fascinating.
Kalamo had a lot of theories centered around him before Age of Imprisonment released, with a really large portion of them boiling down to, now I'm willing to bet that Kalamo is the Great Deku Tree in the Wild Era or something. He basically became the poster boy for theories around the game, along with his best bud, and I'll admit that I actually did buy into the theory. He talks about wanting to take root all the time, plus it's a Korok, and the Great Deku Tree doesn't appear to be a thing in the distant past in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, the ancient tree stump has been one of those areas like something, like the bottomless swamp. In the time that the Wild Era has been going on, the ancient tree stump hasn't had that many theories based around it. A lot of the theories that it has had boil down to old Great Deku trees or old big trees, and which one it could have been, yada yada. Personally, I never thought we'd get an explanation for something like the ancient tree stump. It just seems like something to throw in a game world. We'd have some minor theories around it, but nothing would ever really come into fruition. Well, if you've seen the end of Age of Imprisonment, and I hope you have done if you've made it this far into the video, then Kalamo and the Night Construct are pit against the Forbidden Construct, this actually being the final battle of the game, a fight that's construct against construct. The power of the Master Sword versus the power of Ganondorf's magic and malice. It's a fight that begins directly after the Night Construct collapses after the battle on Hyrule Field. Sheer willpower wakes the Construct back up from a momentary slumber as it wants to protect its friends, and especially Kalamo. So the battle ensues. Probably the most epic battle in any of the Warriors games if I'm being deadly serious. Eventually the Night Construct and Kalamo are victorious. The Forbidden Construct is beaten, but the Night Construct doesn't make it far before it too falls to the ground. Although it found friends, its purpose had been fulfilled in the eyes of the Master Sword Shard. Its job was finished. Kalamo sobs over his best bud's parts. After numerous battles together and the Construct always running headfirst into trouble while Kalamo, against his better judgment, would always follow. Kalamo plants his spear and vows to set up his route in the exact position that the Construct lies. And so is born the ancient tree stump. First of all, there's a chance that you're confused if you didn't read much past the end credits and aren't looking around much. So let's talk about where the ancient tree stump is in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's located right in central Hyrule Field, quite near to where the Sheikah Tower for that area is found in Breath of the Wild. It's an unassuming part of the map, being one of those weird things that, especially if you're just casually playing the games, well, you never decide to question it, let's be honest. From the ancient tree stump you can see Death Mountain and many other small landmarks. In Age of Imprisonment, the first end credits scene has Lunalia burning the parts in history that both involved Kalamo and the Constructs, for the reasons that I discussed in the Imprisoning Chambers section of the video. And standing right next to Lunalia is a small tree that's starting to take root, ready to become one of the bigger trees in Hyrule's history. Now, of course, that's not enough proof. A little bit further along in the second ending cutscene, there's a clear time jump and there's a big wide shot of a tree standing in the centre of Hyrule Field. Out in the distance, you can see Death Mountain and all of those fun little landmarks that I was talking about earlier. And Koroks. Clearly, Kalamo and his tree became a part of the Korok's history. I mean, Kalamo talked to a lot of the Koroks in his time in Age of Imprisonment. And honestly, that's good enough to make this whole ending satisfying for me. If you still think that this is actually the Great Deku Tree's era due to the Koroks or anything else, then Breath of the Wild's voice memories and Zelda notes actually alludes to an archaeological survey that will take place at the ancient tree stump. Now, move ahead, in Tears of the Kingdom's voice memories, Zelda says that the survey came back and there was an ancient spear in the centre of the stump, confirming, at least to me, that Kalamo's Gerudo spear is very likely to be the very same spear. There's always a chance that there's another Korok who used a spear to root, but the timings of release of Zelda notes and Age of Imprisonment, along with the tease in Breath of the Wild to the confirmation in Tears of the Kingdom's notes, I can't see a world where this wasn't a code to Kalamo in Age of Imprisonment just a few months before we knew what it meant exactly. The ancient tree stump is one of my favourite characters in the Wild era, and I can't wait to see if at least just the ancient tree stump is in a future Zelda game. Kalamo, the ancient tree stump, and the Construct are forever intertwined, and I really think that that is a satisfying ending.
The last location we'll be visiting in this video is quite mysterious. We don't know exactly where it is, but we do know what it contains. I'm talking about none other than the ancient chamber where we find the forbidden Zonai constructs. This location is discovered as Minoru, Zelda, and Rauru venture further into the depths than previously explored, a survey mission to further map them out and discover ancient Zonai history. After battling off creatures of this underworld and long-forgotten, now corrupt Zonai constructs, the trio come across an old, crumbling and overgrown doorway, once sealed by a Zonai lock, but now barely holding its structural integrity. There's enough damage to this door to allow them to slip through, and despite the pathway ahead looking unpredictable, the trio proceed through.
Inside this corridor, Rauru noticed flame emitters and used his Zonai magic to bring light to the passageway. As they continue to walk deeper within, they come across signs to turn back. There's an ancient Zonai written message saying to stay away, as well as a new broken Zonai seal, once a powerful lock used to keep whatever lies beyond here out of sight. It's clear that they've made a heavy discovery at this point, but as to what lies ahead is unknown. As they venture further in, the trio enter a large room, and inside is multiple Zonai constructs laying atop platforms. However, these constructs are not like the ones that we know of. They appear more human-like, suiting a full body, limbs, and a head. Unlike the other constructs that serve more practical designs for their usage, this technology, whilst laying lifeless, even alerts King Rauru. They quickly identify the very real possibility that this technology is connected to the downfall of the Zonai people long ago.
Where exactly is this location? We have a vague idea that it's somewhere below Tobio's Hollow, emphasis on vague. The mission that gets us here starts below Tobio's Hollow, but there's an entire venture into the depths that takes us further away. At a very rough estimate, it's likely to be somewhere within this vicinity. Obviously, if we take a look around in Tears of the Kingdom, we don't find any of this. It didn't exist yet. But in lore terms, it obviously did. So speaking in game terms, why can we not find it? Well, many generations have passed between the Imprisoning War and the modern day. It could have been caved in naturally, or perhaps on purpose to hide the technology away for good. We know through the endgame cutscene that Minoru didn't want this part of history to be recorded in order to protect future generations. It was in poor condition back in the ancient past, so you can imagine this struggling to last all the way to the modern era anyway.
The deeper question here is, how long exactly has this been here? We know that in relation to this ancient era where Rauru and Minoru are the only remaining Zonai left, that to them they refer back to an ancient period where the Zonai lived. Rauru strongly suspects that this technology is what led to their downfall, and if this is true, then these forbidden constructs could have been down here for several generations. Looking at the condition of the security of this place, it's clear that this chamber was built with the intent to stay sealed for thousands of years, untold thousands of years. It's entirely possible that this chamber has been discovered before and left alone. It's a new mystery that Age of Imprisonment has brought onto us.
The forbidden technology found down here is seen in action throughout the game, and between the knight construct Clink and its evil counterpart Girahim, we can see exactly why these artificial warriors were locked away. They're extremely powerful, precise, agile, and dangerous. The fact that they can be easily controlled by both good influences, but also bad ones, is extremely problematic. I can absolutely believe that this is the technology that led to the downfall of the ancient Zonai. It takes one moment for these machines to fall into the wrong hands. In this case, that very moment almost aided the complete downfall of Hyrule and rise of Ganondorf.